in five, four, three, two.
Welcome back, everyone. Hi, Emily. Thanks for joining us today.
Hey, Sally, nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. All right. So, what I want to kind of ask you about is your personal transfer experience, because I know that you started at one school, it didn't work out great. Then you went to another one, and that one was much, much better. So maybe you could just sort of start taking us through it. Like, how did you end up? Where did you start out at, and how did you pick that first school?
Very haphazardly. If you're a parent listening and you have a straggler student, this can be maybe a good story to share with them. The second semester of my high school senior year, I decided that I wasn't sure if I wanted to go to college right away. I had a part-time job that I loved at Borders Books, if you remember Borders. And I had the option to go full-time after graduation if I wanted to, and that was appealing to me. So I decided I wasn't going to apply to college. And then about May of senior year, I changed my mind. And lucky for me, my local public university had what's called rolling admission. So Sally, obviously you know what rolling admission is, but for our listeners who don't know, it basically means that a school starts admitting students pretty early on. Like maybe you could apply the summer before your senior year and be admitted in maybe August or September, but it also means these schools have a very late deadline. So for my rolling admission school, the deadline wasn't until August after my senior year, which is very late.
Yes.
And no, this was a not especially selective school. That might have something to do with it. So I was able to apply for college in May or June, I think, is when I decided to do that. Was able to be admitted really quickly, but there was zero research that went into it. It wasn't a fit school for me as far as, social life or campus or anything went, but it was the option that I had 10 miles away from home. So I took it. So that was the extent of my college research.
Okay. So I just want to say that we do advise that people do more research than that. And I think it sounds like Emily would agree with that. So Emily, tell me kind of then what didn't work about it. I mean, it's always a possibility that people can just like the local university that they go to with no research works great for them. But this one really didn't work for you. What were those reasons?
Me, I was really the reason. I didn't make any effort to get engaged on campus, or I didn't join any clubs. I would drive from my parents' house to campus, park in a huge parking lot, walk to my classes, walk back to my car, and drive away. So I didn't even stop at the dining halls or the cafes. I didn't hang out on the quad. I just did nothing related to campus life. And obviously, because of that, I think I made one friend the whole year. I was working a lot. I chose to keep my part-time job, and I was working 32 hours a week. And they were swing shifts, meaning I was working 3 to midnight. So I had a job the rest of college too, but I was sure to reduce my hours. And I think 32 is just way too much for any full-time college student. So the key factor here and why it didn't work was me. I had friends who went to the same school later who one became student body president. Like clearly there were ways to get involved and I chose not to. So I was really an example of like how not to be a commuter student. It's hard for commuters to get involved because of transportation and needing to be off campus and maybe working, but I just was an example of how not to get involved. So if you are thinking of being a commuter campus, you can be student body president and get really involved, but you just have to take the initiative.
Even on campuses that are almost 100% commuter or fully 100% commuter, like many community colleges, although not all, getting involved is the way to really be successful. So I'm really glad to hear you say that. All right. So then what happened when you decided to transfer? What was that process like?
I was, again, a straggler in this case. I was always making last minute decisions as a teenager, apparently. So in the spring of my freshman year, my dad was aware that I wasn't happy at that time. My parents knew that. And I have a parent who lived in another state where I had been born. So she had an address there. So because of that, my dad said, hey, you seem pretty miserable. Do you want to see if you could get in-state tuition at that other college? And I called the registrar's office and was actually able to do that. So that was a huge, clearly finances were a big motivation for my family. We were looking for the cheapest college experience possible. So I was able to apply, I think in March or April of my freshman year, again, taking advantage of a rolling admission policy at school number 2. And the admission process for me was very easy, just like my first college. It was basically a piece of paper that I filled out and mailed. and then sent in my transcripts and test scores. The internet was a little less happening back then. So I sent all that stuff in, was admitted really quickly. So that was easy. But when I got to campus, I had to really fight for some of my credits to transfer, which is a word of warning. If you're a student who's thinking of starting at one 4-year, moving to another 4-year, the system is not designed for you to transfer easily. When I worked at University of Southern California, I had a lot of California students who would say, hey, I was denied. I want to transfer later. Should I go to this 4-year university that accepted me, or should I go to a California community college? And I would always say community college. If you're really sure you want to transfer and you want a really clean transfer process, do that. Because for me, I had meeting after meeting with department chairs, administrators, registrars. I even had, this dates me, I had to go to the library and pull microfiche of school number 1's course catalog so that I could print out a description of a course to show a department chair.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they can be really strict. And I'm sure that the school that you went to, which, you can say the name of it if you want to, since you had a good experience. We won't say the name of the first one, but like University of Arkansas is the one you transferred to, and you really liked it. So I think we can say good things about it. But yeah, they're probably very well set up to take transfers from their in-state community college, but not from another state, another 4-year college, or frankly, even probably another, even if you've gone to community college in the first place that you were. So I think that's really important to note. All right, but it sounds like it worked out if you were persistent. So I think that's a good tip too.
Yeah, and it was also my own battle. When you're in college, as a parent, even though you might want to chime in and call those department chairs and registrars, it's not really your place to do it anymore, partly because of FERPA privacy rules, but partly your student is a young adult and needs to figure out how to handle administrative frustration on their own. So that was a good lesson for me. It was an epic battle that my family still talks about to this day, but it worked out. And my campus experience was much better too, because I had learned from my previous experience of what not to do as a college student. And as a transfer student, people feel like there's challenges there too socially. That how do you get involved when everybody already knows each other? But that really didn't feel like the case at my campus. There was about 15,000 people. So there were students of all ages and transfers. And just by going to the involvement fair, joining a couple of clubs, I was able to kind of find my people, carve out my corner of campus in a way that I really didn't try at school number 1.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so I think that's really important. Like, what were some of the activities that you joined, and did you feel at all unwelcome because you hadn't been there from the beginning? I think often students feel like they're not going to be welcome as a transfer student.
So Arkansas was smart in the way that they placed their transfer students in housing. So I was in a dorm with my roommate was a transfer student from a community college in Arkansas. The rest of the people in my building, a lot of them were transfer students or were international or athletes. So it was a mix of kind of non-traditional people anyway. So I felt like we were all in the same boat. But I also made a point to get outside of the dorm and join clubs as well. Because on paper, Arkansas was not a fit for me socially, politically, any of those things. But I identified clubs that kind of made sense for me and where I thought I could find my people. So I went to an involvement fair. I joined a startup campus radio station, a literary and arts magazine that was just starting up as well. By the second semester, I took 1 semester off of working, and then I got a job at the campus newspaper. So by joining those 3 things, I found people with similar interests, and it also exposed me to a larger scene within the college town of music and arts and things like that. Mm-hmm. So even though on paper, the school wasn't a fit for me, and we talk so much about fit with students, I think my experience was kind of proof that, okay, on paper, a school might not look 100% perfect for you, but if you have a good attitude and just make an effort to find your crowd, then you can make it work.
Mm-hmm. I think that's really important. And I will say, and I'm somebody who loves the small liberal arts colleges, but I think that a larger university is probably going to be more flexible in that way, that there really is a little bit of everybody. So that experience, it might not work as well at a smaller college because you really need to do the research and make sure that it's your people who are there. But at a large school, I mean, you can go to UC Berkeley, which is known for being liberal, and find hardcore Republicans. You really, really can. And Arkansas, you can find hardcore liberals. So it's like everybody's going to be there. It's totally fine. All right. So it sounds like the key thing, though, was absolutely just being involved. The other thing I was thinking about, though, you commented that University of Arkansas does a good job of kind of putting you, of sort of where they put your housing. So they had some kind of a system in place for transfer students. Is that accurate?
Well, they did a good job of it, but I don't know if I can say for sure that it was planned. There's also a chance that a lot of us ended up there because we applied a little bit late in the game. The dorm was not the nicest. It had a reputation for being kind of at a corner of campus that was a little inconvenient, and it was not the prettiest, nicest new campus or dorm. So I think there might have just been accidental kind of happiness that resulted. So I can't say that they were super on top of it, but the weird mix of people they put in that dorm, we all ended up getting along really well together. And you asked too if there was any sense of, did I feel not shunned necessarily, but like an outsider coming in when other people had been there? If anything, it was the opposite. It was very welcoming. And the fact that I was from about 1,200 miles away made me a novelty. People were really surprised to hear where I was from and had questions about what I was doing there, but it made for a really great icebreaker.
Right. Like, you came here from where and why did you do that? Part of the reason I wanted to highlight, by the way, kind of what the transfer process might have been like is that there are some schools that have a large percentage of transfers and seem to do a really good job with it. So like if you're planning on transferring into Penn State, I think it's something like 50% of their graduating class is transfers. So like you absolutely don't need to worry about that. But I think the good news actually is that at most colleges, people kind of love transfers. At the small college that I went to, Reed College, like, you know, it was really fun to sort of see that new face and be like, hello, who are you? What are you doing here? Where did you come from? You know, I always really enjoyed kind of working with the transfers. Also, when I was an admissions officer and never really saw them, you know, having a problem like acclimating, actually. So your experience sounds pretty valid to me. The main thing, though, is get involved, especially if you don't live on campus. It's really, really crucial to get involved.
Yes, that made a huge difference for me. I'll also mention too, at USC, we had a lot of transfer students. We were a private school that actually had a pretty healthy population of transfer students, mostly from California and community colleges. And I would meet some of these students and they would sometimes say to me, oh, I feel like since I'm a transfer student, it's different. And I would remind them that nobody knows you're a transfer student unless you say it out loud.
Right.
Especially at a school with 18,000 people. Like, you're not walking around with a scarlet T.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I would remind those students, you don't have to bring it up to people. You can just seamlessly blend into the crowd here.
Yeah. Yeah. And honestly, even, again, at my small college, I knew who the transfers were because I worked with them. But often students were just like, unless they moved into the dorm newly, like people didn't know. So, all right, great. Well, thank you so much, Emily. This is really, really helpful today. So before we get started, or before I do sort of my final outro, I wanted to talk a little bit about my college, which is Reed College. Very well known for self-motivated and intellectually curious students. We're all about a genuine love of learning, and it might be a really ideal fit if you have a student who is all about a genuine love of learning. Reed has always encouraged students to discover new passions in a demanding and intense academic environment. It is a school of about 1,400, and although people think of liberal arts colleges as being stronger in the humanities, which is, of course, really strong at Reed, mathematics and sciences are very popular, and actually a really high percentage of Reedies go on to pursue graduate work in those fields. In fact, and I always love to tell people about this, Reed ranks among the top 5 American institutions in the percentage of students who go on to earn PhDs in the fields of math and science, according to the National Science Foundation. And that's in spite of the fact that they don't even offer an engineering degree. So Another thing to know is that Reed has one of the strongest core curriculums in the country. It's somewhat similar to Columbia's. They have a first-year humanities course, which takes students from the ancient Mediterranean to the rise of the Roman Empire. And it also has a senior thesis requirement, full year senior thesis that every student does. And other fun facts: Reed boasts 31 Rhodes Scholars, which is the third highest of any U.S. liberal arts college, and nearly 90 Fulbright recipients and 3 MacArthur Fellows. So lots and lots of good stuff going on there. All right. Thank you so much, Emily. And so everybody get ready for our show on April 9th, when we'll be answering listener questions and addressing COVID-19 in the financial aid process. And if you want more information about how to handle the admission process in the time of COVID-19, please check out our show from March 26th. Our host, Ian Fisher, and school senior, discussed how she is making her final decision as to which college to attend, even though she can't visit again. So that should be pretty interesting to people. And remember, if you're looking for specific topics in our archives, you can search for them using our blogs. The URL for that is blog.getintocollege.com. And last, don't forget, we're here every Thursday at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. So check us out.
All clear.
All right. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you, Sally. It was a pleasure working with you.